What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and in today's episode of the Fighting Game Tutorial Series, we're going to be going over Tag Team Matches Part 5. So in this match, we're actually going to be possessing our characters. I did a little bit of rearranging because initially I wanted to have this episode after we dealt with the camera and the camera edge issues that we were running into. However, I figured out that it would be a lot faster and a lot easier to test if we could control those other characters. So today's episode is going to be about possessing the other characters on your team. So I know it's a little bit of a pain because of those camera edge issues, but if we move our characters in such a way where I can have all three of them on the screen at the same time. There we go. So all three of my characters are here at the same time for player one. It's the three that are facing right. If I am to control this character and then tag out this character, I'm now controlling this character. And then I can tag out and control the last character. Technically this works for player 2 as well, but because I'm on keyboard mode and there's that keyboard mode hack, there are some additional steps that we have to do to get that working. So we'll cover that shortly. For now, all we have to know is that we can actually possess the different characters and tag between them in our tag match. That's what we're going to be covering in today's episode. If you want to get caught up in the series before you watch this episode, check out all the cool things we can do in the fighter. You can click this link in the top right corner right here to check out the entire fighting game tutorial series. Alternatively, if you don't care about that and you just care about tag matches, that's perfectly fine. You can click this link right here to get caught up in the tag episodes from part 1. This is a code and blueprint tutorial series, but we're going to be doing pretty much everything in the code today. So let's go into our Visual Studio and let's start in the fighter template character.h. In FighterTemplateCharacter.h, we made a function called tagout, and that function was intended to be used to tag characters out, so tag the current character out, whatever character this FighterTemplate character is, with a reserve character on the team. If I'm on Team 1, I can switch myself out for another character on Team 1. Previously in the series, we were just using a log to print out and show that this was working with our input and our match type, but we're going to take this a little bit further today, and we're going to add a return type here, which is actually a type boolean, that determines if we were able to successfully tag out that character. So if you've been following the series, you'll have void tag out, but I've changed it to bool tag out. So we're returning a boolean. I've updated the comment as well. Returns true if the character was successful in tagging out. Let's go to the FighterTemplateCharacter.cpp and go down to our tag out function. So here we go. A fighter template character, tag out. I've updated void to be a boolean now so that we have a return type. So everything I have highlighted here was the same as before in the series, but you'll notice that I've commented out the log that I had and instead added a return true here. So remember, returning true means that we were able to successfully tag out this character. There are several reasons we may not be able to tag out a character successfully. First of all, we're in a 1v1 mode. If we're in 1v1 or solos, we can't tag out, we don't have another character to tag out with. 2, all our remaining reserve characters are defeated. This is the only alive character. Thus, they can't tag out with any of the dead characters. However, we don't have that logic in yet, just something to keep in mind for the future. Third, you may get silenced or have some sort of game mechanic where you aren't able to tag out. You're locked in for a certain period of time after receiving damage, after getting a certain status effect. There's a lot of reasons. However, in this case, I'm just saying return true if the team mode type is not equal to solo. So as long as this is a tag match, I'm allowing them to swap out. That's all we're worried about for now. So I'm just saying return true. Then at the very bottom, I say return false. So if we don't return true here, so say this if statement returns false because it is solos or 1v1, then we will not go into this if statement. So then we'll exit out of this if statement and we'll hit this line return false, which means tag out was not successful. So we're staying the same character that we were when we called the function. Now that we have tagout updated, let's go into our BasePlayerController.cpp and scroll down to our call tagout function. So here's call tagout. Now previously in the series, all we had was if possessed pawn and then we were calling possessed pawn tagout. That was literally it. We have a whole function here with a bunch of logic. So we still need to make sure there's a pawn. If we're going to tag out, we have to have some pawn to call the tag out function on. So a pawn absolutely has to exist. But now instead of just calling tag out on possessed pawn, I'm adding that to an if statement. if possessed pawn tag out, because remember, tag out now returns that boolean. We only want to do the following logic in this function if tag out returned true, if it was a successful tag out. If not, we just want to ignore it. If the character was successfully tagged out, though, we do need to do a lot more logic. So first thing I'm going to do is get our game mode, because our game mode has our teams on it and what characters are on those teams. So if auto game mode, and I'm casting get world, get auth game mode to our game mode type, which is a fighter template game mode. So the result of this cast is going to be put into the game mode variable. If it succeeds, it will be valid, which means we will go into this if statement. If not, nothing happens. We don't have an else. We just fail out. The game mode's invalid. We can't continue from here. Assuming it's true, however, we continue on to this behavior right here. So I have this section commented pretty well. We should be able to follow along with that pretty easily. The first thing we want to do when we've determined that we should tag out a character, and we are able to, is determine what slot we are in our characters array, right? And what team we're on. Now, our controllers don't really have any sort of way to determine if we're on team 1 or team 2. So I'm going to check each array and see if the possessed pawn is contained within that array. If the pawn I'm possessing is contained in the team 1 characters array, we know that this is a character that's on team 1. Else, if they're contained in the team 2 characters array, they're on team 2. So I have game mode team 1 characters, this is my characters array, dot contains, and I'm looking for the possessed pawn, the pawn that the controller is possessing. So if this is true, that we contain this, we know we're on team 1, so we can continue on to this logic here. Now we have to determine what index in the array we are at. Say we're playing trios, we're at index 0, the second character on the team is index 1, the third character on the team is index 2. For now, we're going to assume when we call tag out, we're just going to the next index in the characters array. I know a lot of games with more than 2 characters on a team will give you the option of what character to swap to. So if you have 3 characters, you can go either to the second or the third character. But for now, we're going to go linearly. So first, second, third, first, second, third, in that order every time. To do this, we can find the index of our current character that we're possessing. So if we call game mode team1 characters.find, and pass in our possessed pawn. We already know that this array contains possessed pawn. Find returns the index of the element within the array. So for the first character, we're index 0. For the second character, index 1. Third character, index 2. That result is going to be put into this variable that I made called tag index. So int tag index is going to essentially store the array index of the character that we're currently controlling. However, we don't want to possess the character we're currently controlling. We want to go one higher, or one further. So now I'm going to increment my tag index. So plus plus tag index. I'm putting the plus plus or the increment on the left side of the variable because this is a pre-increment. Essentially what that means is this increment will occur before it reads the rest of the statement. So we can check to see if this value, plus 1, is greater than game mode team1 characters.num minus 1. What we're doing here is making sure that we are falling within the bounds of the array. Since we're going in a linear relationship, we're just adding 1 every time to go to the new index. However, if we go outside the bounds of the array, we will crash because we can't possess that character. Game mode team1 characters.num to return the number of elements in the array for team1 characters. However, this returns the actual number of elements, so if the indices are 0 and 1, it's going to return a number of 2. There are 2 elements in that array. So when we're checking to see if our tag index is greater than that value, we need to subtract 1 from the number of elements in the array to make sure it's within the bounds of the indices in the array. If tag index is greater than the highest element in the array, so we're going to reset it back to the lowest element in the array. So it's going to go 0, 1, 2, and then at that point we can't go to index 3, that doesn't exist, so we'll reset the variable back to 0. So that's what this whole section is doing. At this point we know what character we want to possess, so we can unpossess the current character. The player controller has a function to do this by default. This isn't one you have to add, so just call unpossess the current character. Now we're going to possess the new character that we want. So I'm calling possess, and then you have to pass in the pawn that you'd like to possess, and we want to possess the game mode of team1 characters at that index that we determined, so passing in tag index. At that point we also want to set possess pawn to this value. So possess pawn equals game mode, tag 1 characters, tag index. The next set of logic is really simple. We're going to basically do the exact same thing, but for team 2 characters. So this is the if statement. We're going to else if. We're going to check if the game mode team 2 characters contains the possess pawn. So if the character wasn't contained within team 1 characters, we're going to assume they're on team 2. But it's best to be sure instead of make an assumption. So we're going to check and make sure that game mode team 2 characters contains that pawn. If this is true, we go into it, then we're going to determine the tag index again. This time, however, we need to do the find on team 2 characters instead of team 1 characters. The same rules apply to player 2 and team 2 that they do to player 1 and team 1. So if they start at index 0 on team 2, when they press the tag out button, they're going to go to index 1. When they press it again, they're going to go to index 2. When they press it again, they're going to loop back around to index 0. So this if statement, we're just going to increment tag index and check to see if it's greater than team 2 characters.num minus 1. If it is, reset tag index back to 0. At this point, we can unpossess the character because we know the next character we want to possess. We're going to call possess, passing in game mode team 2 characters at that index we determined. Then we're going to set possess pawn to that character that we determined. We can go ahead and launch the editor. Now that the editor is back open, we can address the issue with the keyboard mode hack that I was mentioning earlier. To do that, we can go to our base character blueprint. And so in all of our event actions in the base character BP, we had these player 2 reference sections where we were grabbing the controller and then getting the base player controller. Player 2 isn't always going to be possessed now, so this player 2 reference isn't always going to be valid. We could update this, however there's actually a better way to fix this, and we're going to have a whole episode on that to finally clean up this hackiness, and it will help us make our tag team matches work for player 1 and player 2 as well. So we're going to ignore it for now. Just know this will technically only work for player 1 because when you go to switch out player 2, you will lose control of player 2, you'll unpossess them, you'll technically possess the other character, but the keyboard mode won't be able to work. So you'll be able to do it on controller with player 2, but not keyboard. Anyway guys, that's all I got for you today, so thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe. It does more for myself in the series than anything else you can do, and I really appreciate that. If you're interested in joining the Patreon, YouTube membership, or Discord subscriptions, feel free to check out this link in the top right corner, as well as the perks on the screen to see all the benefits. And also a huge thank you to all the kind souls who have already done so. If you ran into any trouble with your tag team matches, feel free to join the Discord community. There is a link in the description, and I would be happy to help you out with any of the problems you ran into. Anyway guys, that's all I got for you today, so thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.